Dr. Surajratan Rambachan, welcome to Vishwarang 2020. Namaste.
Namaste. Thank you very much for having me.
Dr. Rambachan has many great qualities. He is a very diversified personality. He is a singer, he is a musician, he is an activist, he is a writer, he is a spiritual leader and a politician. Dr. Rambachan was the president of the Society for the Promotion of Indian Culture at University of the West Indies. He is elected member of Guild of Undergraduates at University. He is appointed ambassador to Brazil. He has received Chile's highest award to non-nationals. He has written many books about spirituality. As a politician, he has served many portfolios. He was the deputy political leader. He was the foreign affairs of minister. He has served as a minister of foreign affairs, minister of works and infrastructure, and has also served as acting prime minister of Trinidad and Tobago. Dr. Rambachan, welcome to Vishwarang 2020.
Thank you. You have put me on a pedestal that I don't deserve.
No, you do deserve. You do. You have a lot of great qualities.
All those are just opportunities that come your way to allow you to serve your country.
That is true. Sir, you have worked in government for many years.
Yes.
You have visited many countries, including India.
Yes.
You have attended in Jaipur the Pravasi Divas with Prime Minister at that time, Kamla Prasad Bisesa.
Yeah.
How was your experience?
Well, I think the Pravasi is one of the most important international events for East Indians across the world, because it provides an ideal opportunity for people to share experiences and to understand the extent to which Indian culture and Indian traditions and the Indian heritage has survived outside of India in what is basically a westernized environment where the propensity for acculturation is very high, and yet it has survived. To give you an example, here in Trinidad and Tobago, although 22%, for example, are Hindus and 46% are East Indians, less than 2% would speak Hindi in Trinidad and Tobago. And yet the visitor from India coming to Trinidad is amazed at the extent of how Hinduism and East Indian cultural traditions have persisted and survived in this country. So, you know, it is a credit to the strength of the culture itself and the way that the culture continues to inspire people to continue to be adherents to the culture, that I think that even in a Western environment, the cultural traditions have survived and are in fact growing very intensely, in my view, in the hearts and minds of people. If you look at North America, for example, where one will suggest that that was the most recent kind of migration in USA and Canada, the number of temples and institutions reflecting the Indian heritage that have been constructed, it's amazing. People just want to be, to retain their cultural soul. And here in Trinidad and Tobago, although it has been a difficult struggle, for many, many reasons, yet, you know, it has survived. In fact, I think Trinidad and Tobago, through the National Council of Indian Culture, by giving to the world the concept of Diwali Nagar, has caused Diwali Nagar to be sprouted in so many cities across North America and Canada. And I think for the celebration of Diwali in this part of the world, that has become a very exciting possibility for young people understanding and appreciating the depths of the tradition. But it has never been easy in our country to ensure that East Indian traditions survive. I'll give you a very good example. I am 72 years old. When I was just about 19 years old and entered the University of the West Indies in St. Augustine, I tried to celebrate Diwali at the campus of the university.
Right.
And the university authorities did not give us permission. And when we finally struggled and marched and demonstrated, they allowed us to celebrate Diwali, but on the condition that we pay insurance for the university compound and also hire 14 policemen and an inspector in order to ensure that there was crowd control in the university. That was never done for any kind of celebration in terms of the other celebrations in the country, like Carnival or Christmas or what have you. But we Hindus and East Indians were subjected to that at the university in order to celebrate. Had we not persisted, I tell you, in that event, way back in 1969, today we would have had a different picture in this country with respect to the celebration of Diwali and other festivals. So it has been a struggle, and it's not easy, and therefore one has to continue to be adamant that our cultural values are something that are close to us, and that nobody is going to take those values away from us.
Certainly, certainly. You have written so many books on spirituality.
Well, I have been inspired by my brother, really, and he's a professor of religion, Professor Anand Rambachan,
Right.
at the St. Olaf College in Minnesota.
Right.
I have been inspired by him in terms of the Ramayana, and most of the 10 books that I have done are really discourses based upon themes in the Ramayana. So, for example, I have a book called Children in the Ramayana. I have a book called The Hindu Marriage in the 21st Century.
Right.
I have values that empower the Hindu way of life. You know, I've been writing in those kinds of topics that are relevant to
Right.
the country and to Hindus.
Which one is your favorite?
I think that my favorite book is How to Be a Hindu and How Not to Be a Hindu. It is a book that is written about the 7 deadly sins of Ravan. So the 7 deadly sins of Ravan is how not to be a Hindu. And then I wrote on the other half of the book, How to Be a Hindu, espousing 6 or 7 values that I think Hindus should follow if you really want to observe Hinduism.
Right, right, right. Very good. Very good. I would like to read that book.
I will send you a copy. But there's another one that I wrote I'm very proud about.
Right.
It is about the lessons that Hanuman taught.
Right.
Now, on another book I wrote called Leadership Lessons from the Ramayana. Now, for 35 years of my life, I was a leadership and management consultant. That's basically was my profession, apart from being a politician. And I taught in many companies across Trinidad and in the Caribbean. But I based my lectures upon what I learned from the Ramayana. So if I was teaching leadership, I was really teaching about the leadership of Sri Ram. Although I may not be saying that in that open way in the classroom, but yet at the back of my mind, my lectures were based upon the philosophy of leadership of Sri Ram. Or if it was Hanuman, I was teaching customer service. It was based upon how Hanuman was a servant of God, how he became the greatest messenger of Sri Ram. So I've really been inspired by the characters of the Ramayana in my own professional pursuits.
Certainly, certainly. You have been involved culturally and spiritually, both in Trinidad.
Yes. Well, both my grandfathers were pundits in this country. And in fact, founding pundits of the Sanatan Dharma Mahasabha, which is a large Hindu organization in the country. So I grew up in both my my Aja's home and my Nana's home with pujas and lectures and discourses and yagnas and so on taking place. And we were encouraged by both my grandfathers, and in my case, particularly by my father and mother, to ensure that we did not forsake our traditions, and that we became also proponents of teachers who would go out and teach the scriptures. So while my brother is a professor of religion at St. Olaf College, he studied with Swami Chinmayananda and Swami Dayananda Saraswati at Sandipani Sadhanalai in the 1970s. My other brother, for example, is the head of the El Socorro Hindu Temple. I am not the head of any temple. I'm not a priest nor a pundit, but I do deliver discourses on the Ramayana. And I do this, on a fairly regular basis. For 15 years, in fact, I run a radio program from 4 a.m. to 6 a.m. every morning, just
Right.
dealing with Hindu topics and Hindu traditions.
Right. What did you see the difference here in Trinidad and in India, in culturally and spiritually?
Well, one of the most organized uh, presentations of Hinduism I saw in India was at the Sai Baba ashram in Puttaparthi,
Okay.
where Sai Baba, in fact, was not only preaching about the tradition and the culture and the tenets of the religion,
Right.
but he had incorporated education, both primary, secondary, and tertiary education.
Right.
And I thought that was wonderful, because what he was then doing is putting educational values through the scriptures to become part and parcel of the lifestyle of people. I was also very impressed. I spent a week and a half as the guest of Swami Dayanand Saraswati at the ashram where my brother studied at Sandipani Sadhanalaya.
Right.
And I was very, very taken back by what I was able to learn there in those 10 days that I spent and lived at that ashram. Those two institutions were very, very organized institutions.
Right.
The rest of India I saw, it was really highly ritualistic. But compared to Trinidad, has benefited in the from congregational worship and practices.
Mm.
And a lot of the way that the Westerners have organized their churches and so on, in Trinidad and Tobago, we have organized ourselves in that way. So you have I would say, a more orderly, organized presentation when we have yajnas and when we have discourses and so on being given. I think that Trinidad and Tobago has a lot to contribute to India in terms of the interpretation of our scriptures. Here in our part of the world, we try to understand at a more deeper basis the philosophy, the symbolism. We try to make sure that we understand how our lives and behaviors should be affected by the scriptures and by the characters that we are studying. So I see that. I don't see that we have blind faith in Trinidad. I think that, people have faith in Trinidad. They have very strong faith, but they're very realistic. And they know that, nothing happens unless you practice the values and unless you take action in order to support the faith that you have in God.
Right. Very good. You are a good singer and musician as well. I know you have sang for India for All India Radio once.
Yes, that was a very touching experience for me. I sang in many temples in India.
Right.
I've had some really remarkable spiritual experiences in India. Very, very remarkable experiences in India.
Right.
And yes, I got the opportunity to sing on All India Radio through a friend in India.
Yeah.
And it was one of the greatest experiences I have had. Firstly, I never knew that at All India Radio, you never use non-electronic instruments. All the instruments have to be non-electronic. And secondly, when you enter that room where you're going to sing, you're sitting on a stage, and you have to take your shoes and go into that room. So sacred, All India Radio treats with its musicians and its music. What was astonishing for many people there, though, was that I don't speak Hindi, and yet I was singing bhajans in Hindi, and that astonished them. There was a lady who came to Trinidad a couple of years ago, and she came here to do business with her son. Right. And she was seeing the Ganesh festival and Ganesh Murti being carried along the streets in Port of Spain.
Right.
So my daughter, who is a lawyer, was handling her business, and she asked my daughter, and my daughter said, well, would you like to go to a temple for Ganesh Puja? She said, well, I never thought I'll get the opportunity, because every year I have Ganesh Puja at my home.
Right.
So she came to Faizabad, and she was amazed at what she saw and the level of devotion and so on, that she invited me to come to India and conduct satsang at her home, which I did about 4 years ago. Wow. And it was a really remarkable experience. And so I've had some good experiences, but I'm a devotee of Sai Baba for many years, and in many ways Sai Baba has touched my life. But I went to India in the 1970s, 74, I believe it was. And one of my wishes was, in fact, to visit Puttaparthi, which I did. But on my way back, I stayed in Delhi.
Right.
And it was a Thursday, and I wanted to go to satsang in Delhi. And someone at the hotel told me that I could go to the satsang at a Shirdi Sai temple. So I found that temple, and I went there to the satsang. And there were about 2,000 persons there at the satsang. So I went and I sat virtually at the back of the audience. About 20 minutes into the program, a gentleman comes up to me, pats me on the shoulder, and says in Hindi, "Would you come and sing?" Now, I'm a total stranger. And I go, and he's talking in Hindi, but I could understand what he's saying.
Right.
He takes me up to the front. So I
Yeah.
asked him to play the harmonium and sing. So I played the harmonium and I sang Dum 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 Rubaji. And then as I was singing, he came back and tapped my shoulder again and said, "Please sing again." So I sang again. And then interestingly enough, he climbed up on a ladder on this 10-foot high Shirdi Murti.
Right.
And took one of the biggest garlands and came and dropped it in my lap. You're not going to believe this. Try as I may to find that gentleman after I could not find him.
I can understand. I can understand how you must have felt. So great.
Yeah, and I really think that was a miraculous encounter I had with Shirdi Sai Baba.
Very nice. Very nice.
Yeah.
After COVID, how it has affected all your work in every field?
Well, COVID, has really turned the world upside down. And I think that in my view, COVID has come at a time when the world was in a moral crisis. The
Right.
world was in a spiritual crisis.
Right.
And I think COVID has come to send a message to us that we need to check ourselves, to check our lives, to check our relationship between ourselves as human beings and non-human forms, between ourselves and the environment, between ourselves and nature. And if you regard nature or creation as the greatest manifestation of God's presence, because I do believe, what Sri Ram said to Hanuman, that Hanuman, you are the servant and I'm the master whose form is the form of all creation.
Right.
But look at what man has done to creation. And I think nature, as God, is sending a message to man that you cannot continue like that, or you're going down the path of self-destruction. I also think at a different level that maybe we are witnessing something of a group karma that is taking place where so many people are getting sick, so many people are losing their lives. It's very unfortunate what is happening, but I'm trying to understand this from the point of view of spirituality, and perhaps what's the message that the Lord is sending to us, or nature is sending to us, because we have to recognize that we do not live independent of nature. We live in an interdependent relationship with nature. And if we affect any part of nature, we're going to affect our own existences. And I think that, with all the climate change that is taking place and everything else, we are really bordering on the brink of a possible self-destruction. And maybe, just maybe, COVID will be an opportunity for us to check ourselves. I also think that COVID is presenting an opportunity for people to engage in a higher level of compassion, higher level of charity, to practice the greater human values that perhaps was missing from our lives for some time. But at the same time, COVID has given the health workers of the world also a chance to really be true servants of God.
Right. Any other great experience you would like to share what you had in India?
I had, many great experiences in India. I think the highlights of one of my meeting was with Mr. Manmohan Singh when he was the minister and when I was the Minister of Foreign Affairs, and visited India then. And, I sat next to him at a dinner, and it was remarkable that when I went to that dinner, I saw a friend of mine, Anup Jalota.
I see.
And it was obvious that Manmohan Singh, as a prime minister, had done his research and had found out Anup Jalota was a family friend and had invited him to that dinner. That detail on the part of the prime minister was something that, I really admired. I admired his humility. And I generally admire the humility of people. But I want to tell you something.
Yeah.
I have been to India consistently since 1973 to 2019.
Mm-hmm.
And every time I go to India, I am refreshed. India refreshes me.
Right.
But I also saw the development that took place under Mr. Manmohan Singh. And I also saw what he has done for women and girls in India. And I think that's one of it. If ever he had success, and now Mr. Modi in particular, I think that, you know, it is what they are doing for women and gender equality in India. I think that that is something that has fascinated me, and I admire very much the extent to which efforts are being made to improve the lives of girls and women in India as a whole. I'm also enthralled by the what I would call the excellent customer service that exists in the hotels now in India.
Right.
You know, people talk about 5-star and 6-star hotels in the United States, but I tell you something. I've stayed at hotels like the Taj Mahal, I've stayed at hotels like the Leela and Son, and these hotels are really, really super in terms of customer service and the way that they treat with their customers. The people of India are making leaps. It seems to me under Modi, they have made, Prime Minister Modi have made what I would like to call an instantaneous leap. They have made a super leap into the century in terms of habits, behaviors, culture, and as a whole in terms of the service experience that they wish to give to people who come to India.
Right. I agree. I totally agree with you. Any books you have read about Rabindranath Tagore?
Well, Gitanjali, of course, everyone would read Gitanjali and his poems in particular. But Rabindranath Tagore, of course, remains one of the most astonishing and remarkable characters that the world would have experienced.
Yeah.
And sometimes I even look at, there's some soaps now that deal with the stories of Rabindranath Tagore.
Yes.
And just last week I was looking at some of those.
Yeah.
I try to read a lot of literature out of India.
Right.
Some very, very, very great thinkers. Devashish Chatterjee is one who is writing quite a lot of material that is really relevant to the Western society and translates Indian philosophy into a way that makes it very livable.
Thank you very much, Dr. Rambachan, for your valuable time.
But thank you for having me. This has been a very nice experience. I don't get the time to talk about these things as I should.
Yes.
Your questions allow me to go back deep into my memory. Thank you so much.
On the behalf of Vishwarang 2020, I thank you so much.
You're welcome. God bless.
Namaste.
Samya?